Hello, this is Joseph Sanchez, one of the co founders of Empathy Cafe, along with Sabrina. Um, Today, we are going to have an interview with Pam Tucker. You know that everybody's got a story that can change your heart. Your story matters. Pam Tucker's story matters. And she has agreed to come live with us and share part of her story. We're going to talk about COVID-19 and how it has changed her life and if she has had to make some adjustments. And also, we are going to talk about a subject that Pam has a passion for it. She has a passion for helping people, especially women that have gone through abuse or they are going through abuse. And we want to put that in the context of COVID. So I'm going to bring Pam Tucker to the screen. Hello, Pam.
Hello, Josue. How are you?
It's good to see you. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, yeah, the first thing I'm going to tell everybody is don't forget I'm Canadian. But I am a gospel singer, jack of all trades, master of none. I've had multiple different careers, but now I live in the United States and got married a few years ago, which was a shock to me. And so now I'm living here in the United States, and I write and I sing, and I have an amazing daughter. So I'm all of those things.
Where is your daughter living? Christina, right?
Yes, my daughter Christina is living in Alberta, and she works at the Burman University there. And
yes, that's right.
Yeah, so she loves working with young people, and she's working part-time on her bachelor's degree as well. So full-time job plus part-time in studies for religious studies. Wow. Yeah, I'm very proud of her.
Yes, and I know you love her very, very much.
Very much. Yes.
Okay, so Pam, our friends that follow Empathy Cafe, they have given us a few suggestions of what type of questions they would like to ask.
All right.
So I'm gonna go to the first one here.
Okay.
Do you hope to go back to life as it was, or will you live differently after this COVID situation?
That's such a good question, because that is one thing everyone is talking about right now, is when is this going to get back to normal? And you hear people saying, well, it's going to be a new normal. And I agree with that, because everything that we have come to rely on, that we take for granted, all of those things have changed, and they change so very quickly that I don't know what new normal is going to look like. I have the small seed of faith and hope that we will be able to go back and still have some of those wonderful relationships, and still be able to work in our communities, and still be able to feel like you can go up and hug somebody without worrying that they're going to go home and wipe themselves down with Lysol wipes. But I don't know what the future holds. That's, right now I'm embracing today.
That's true. What is something that you plan to no longer take for granted?
Flying across the border to harass my daughter as often as I like to.
How often do you do that?
If I'm very fortunate and we get ministry appointments, sometimes within the vicinity, I can get up to Canada to see her 2 or 3 times, and then get her here to Texas a few times. This particular pandemic has really, messed up our Mother's Day plans, because Christina and I had a phenomenal trip planned for the Mother's Day weekend. And so we planned this back before anybody started talking about it. And we've had to cancel flights and hotel and our mother-daughter time. So, you got to know Mother's Day with my daughter is very special.
Oh, of course it is.
So we're just planning another amazing trip, and we are hoping that the border will allow for her to cross into the United States. And if so, I'll put her on a plane and bring her down here, or we might just do some camping and explore some of the national parks.
It was on the news, I think yesterday or before yesterday, that Canada and the US have prolonged the closed borders for 30 days.
Yes, and that would have taken us to the 3 days after our mother-daughter trip was supposed to have been
Oh,
over. So we were just holding on, hoping, please, please,
oh,
please, please open. I don't care if there's a lot of people where we go, but
yeah,
you know, they say better safe than sorry.
that's true.
Yeah.
Something that I have seen online a lot is about um, when, well, there are very funny memes of people what they will do when this is over, right? So they will go hug everybody.
Yeah.
The memes say, "Well, I didn't hack you before. I'm not going to hack you after," right? There's so many things. Um, One of the things that I have seen around is about intentionality. You know,
Mhm.
if you don't want to use humor and just be philosophical about it,
Right.
that's the next question. Will you live more intentionally post-pandemic, or do you think you already live intentionally, or has this changed that aspect?
I believe over my lifetime, I have become more intentional because I've known how important it is to reach somebody that's isolated, and it's the isolation. But intentionality is important if you're going to get to know somebody.
Yeah.
If you truly want to be a part of someone's life, when you say, "How are you doing?" you need to be prepared to spend some time.
Hmm.
It's not a, "Hey, how are you doing?" "Okay, good, bye-bye." No, that's not what it's about. It's saying, "Hey, hold on a second. No, really, how are you doing?"
Hmm.
Because I know what it feels like where somebody has said, "How are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, hey, I'm good, you know. Hey, funny, funny, funny." And they're like, "Okay, great." And then they've walked away. But there
Yeah.
have been people that said, "No, seriously, what's going on?" Now,
Mhm.
I'll use you as an example because I try and put things out there that are lighthearted and fun and things like that. And at the same time, you sent me a message and said, "How are you really?"
Mhm.
Because we sort of mirror sometimes people that use humor to cover pain and things like that.
Yeah.
And so it's being intentional to get to know who my neighbors are. That's important. Intentional to be able to commit the time. If you get the impression, whether it's the Holy Spirit or your inner voice or whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
whatever is telling you stop, this person needs you,
Yeah.
then I'd like to believe that as I progress from beyond this situation that we're in, I will continue to be intentional,
Yeah.
but I will be, I guess, have my eyes and my ears open. So not just what I see, but what do I hear
Mhm.
by using all of my senses.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that intentionality. It shows empathy,
Hmm.
right? It's not
Yeah.
just a like button,
Yeah.
a laugh icon when we see.
Right.
Um, for example, something that I have learned about intentionality. I usually try to be intentional as you are. We both
Mhm.
are die-hard empaths. Sometimes it's a curse sometimes
Sure.
because we feel with the other person
Hmm.
and and we suffer with them, right?
Yes.
But during this COVID-19 crisis, when I see all these people sharing videos and suddenly having the time to connect via Zoom with everybody, etc.
Yes.
I've noticed that um, the video feature, the video chat, has always been available to us. And yet, it's lately that more people are using it to have that personal connection, right?
Yeah. People are craving connection. They're
Yes,
craving connection.
yes,
That's really what it is. And
yes.
and everyone literally had the rug ripped out from underneath them.
Hmm.
Because when you think about the connection that people want to have, even, all the focus has been on the frontline workers and all the people, but they need to know that we care about them, not just the doctors, the nurses, the grocery store person.
Yeah.
I stop and I talk to the guy at the dollar store, the manager, and I'm like, are you okay? Like, are you hanging in? Is there anything? What can we do for you?
Yeah.
And just the fact that they appreciate somebody taking the time to stop and ask them. And it reminds me that just a few weeks ago, I'm married to Mike Tucker, who is the speaker emeritus for Faith for Today. But he is still part of Faith for Today ministry and will always. But they were going through just their list of contacts of people that have been supporters of Faith for Today over the years. And he phoned a woman whose husband has now passed on. And she is in not great situation. She's in a wheelchair now. She's unable to get out. She can't cut the lawn. She can't even, she's got a car in her driveway that has to be sold, but she doesn't have anyone to help her. And she didn't ask for anything, but she did ask Mike to pray with her. And so to have taken that time was so special to her. But Mike got off the phone and he went, that's just not enough. And he, searched for an Adventist church in her community, phoned them, and they knew, of course, who he was. And he said, look, I need you to reach out and see if there's someone that can go by and help this woman. And they were able to get someone that would go. They're going to take care of her yard. Someone's going to help her sell the vehicle. And it doesn't matter that it doesn't have to translate into something tangible as a reward for doing something good. It was the impression that this person needed connection. She needed someone. And to be able to follow through on that is a question that we all have to ask ourselves. Is what I ask myself is, what else can I do for that person that is within the realm of my possibility?
It's the stop, think,
be prepared,
and talk to the person.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would rather have 5 intentional conversations than 30 quick text messages.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just, I love chatting with you, Pam.
I know.
I'm enjoying it so much. It is. I think that this world needs more people like you.
Well,
really,
I think about you, so I don't know if the world can handle too many of us, though.
I was browsing. By the way, I forgot to say that Pam is one of the writers of Empathy Cafe. She loves writing, and a few days ago, you wrote a piece, Pam, regarding abuse. You have your own personal story about abuse, and throughout your writing, you show your passion to help other people. In that piece that you wrote for Empathy Cafe, you added a graphic that you put together, right?
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. And I'm gonna share it now so we all can see that. And I would like to ask you if you like to walk us through.
Walk us through.
Walk us through.
Yeah.
The little lines, the graphic, what it means.
Sure.
Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm gonna, if I can figure this out. There you are. Okay.
There it is.
I want to put it big. It doesn't make a big difference.
Yes. Okay.
All right.
No, you know what? It's good. I can see long from one eye and short from the other one. So if I wink a little bit, it doesn't mean I'm winking at you. But I do actually. I know that graphic without looking at that graphic.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
Would you like to walk us through it?
Well, I find that when I write, and writing has, as much as my music is an expression and when I've recorded albums, people say, well, did you write those songs? And I've always held to the fact that I don't need to write new songs, because there are amazing songs out there that tell the story, and that they tell my story, and it's just me connecting with them. And with the isolation that has been happening, and being unable to do concerts and go out to churches and to do the things that I would normally do, I have been pouring myself into writing. And I think in color. I don't think in black and white, and I think in images, and I see a word, and that word becomes a picture and becomes a story. And I have been, within the last few weeks, having to revisit some traumatic experiences that happened to me 18 years ago. And it's not pleasant by any means. It is post-traumatic stress. It is what soldiers experience that relive traumatic experiences over and over again. They have these flashbacks and things, and it impacts your sleep. It impacts your food, the intake, all of those. It impacts everything. And as I was sitting down writing for Empathy Cafe, I had a picture of an iceberg. And I thought, well, the Titanic, that was the one that was sunk by the iceberg. And then I sort of chased a rabbit and went down a rabbit hole of what were the specifics of the Titanic, and how many people died, and how many people went into the water, and what was the significance of the iceberg. And the reality was, the person who saw the iceberg, the captain, we'll just say it was the captain, didn't think that they were going to be damaged, because he only saw just a little tiny iceberg in comparison. But the damage that was done to the Titanic was, I think it was 5 or 6 compartments, which they had never accounted for. They accounted for 2 or 3 being flooded, and they'd still be able to float. But the catastrophic damage that happened below the line of water. And when you look at this graphic and you see, how big is this iceberg? The damage is all below the surface, because any ship that runs into it, they're going to think that they've steered around it. And when you refer to it from an abuse situation for a victim, the victim does not go into a relationship thinking, oh, this person is mean and vindictive and spiteful, and they're going to hurt me, and they're physically abusive, and they're verbally abusive and spiritually abusive. They don't think of all those things, because what they see above the line is charming and intelligent and well-spoken and warm and caring, charismatic. Charismatic is also a word that is used to describe somebody who's a sociopath.
Yeah.
And so you look at all of these things, and this is what the perpetrator shows the world. This is what but the victim, what the victim is experiencing, is the catastrophic damage that is happening below the line, out of sight, in isolation, because the perpetrator isolates the victim first. After they've wooed them with all of the wonderful words of love and friendship and companionship and all of those things, and then comes in the words that tear your self-esteem down, that tell you that you're no good, that tell you that you're ugly, that tell you that you can't cook, that tell you that you're not worth anything, that you should be lucky that they're with you. And all of that chips away and rips cavernous holes in the underbelly of a wonderful steamliner that was never supposed to be sunk. We were never created to be destroyed.
No.
And yet this is the things that victims experience that the general population don't see, because they see the top. This is, but they're charming. They're so talented. They let out in Sabbath school last week, and they were very knowledgeable on their Bible. Yes, but then the Bible is also the weapon of choice, because they can use it to imprison somebody.
Yeah, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. I was chatting with a lady that, and she's she's been abused by her husband in ways that she confided in me, and I just kind of repeat here. It's not safe for
Mhm.
viewers, but it was abusing bad.
Yes.
That person is a leader in her church,
Sure.
and knows the Bible from top to bottom,
Of course.
and is charismatic,
Mhm.
and everybody thinks highly of him.
Mhm.
And her her fear was, nobody's going to believe me.
Because they only see what's on the surface.
Exactly.
Right. And so that is I shared this with a closed Facebook group that I am a member of.
Mhm.
And immediately I had counselors and victims all saying, where did this come from? Like, who made this? Like, what, like, how did this even come about? And for me to be able to, in a safe place, share that, this was my experience. And, but I knew that other people out there are experiencing that right now. And isolation because of a pandemic
Mm.
means greater sense of isolation because you don't have an outlet to even to be safe. I had work.
Yeah, you can go anywhere.
I was able to go to work. And I have read recently that in some countries, they're implementing a code for abused women because one of the few places that you can go when you're in a shelter in place is the pharmacy, the grocery store. And certain countries over in Europe have a code where it's like 999. And
Mm.
they can say to the pharmacist 999. And the pharmacist will know to phone the police to get
That's wonderful.
help.
Yeah.
And but that's there should be a universal code for that because people see what they see. I've had a friend of mine who was married, and their marriage for 26 years, she never went to church without a bruise. But he always sat with his arm around her in church. So and he was an elder of the church and well respected and so this is just really I created it and I shared it. It does two things. One, I hope spread and open our eyes to
Mhm.
understand this is happening. We've talked about ending violence, we've talked about ending abuse, but it's still happening because there are victims out there that aren't believed. There are perpetrators out there that are very convincing, and we have to start being very intentional about understanding that we have a responsibility. There were 700 mostly women and children that were saved of the ones who survived the Titanic, and I believe that it's still our time to save the women and children. Statistically, more
Mm.
women are victims of domestic violence than
Yes.
men, but it's underreported in men.
Actually, now that you mentioned that, um, yesterday I was browsing Facebook, like we all do. I was scrolling, and there was this video that was shared. It was supposed to be funny
Mhm.
about a prank that a dad and two children played on the mom, and how she responded.
Mhm.
She responded in a way that it was clear that that was abusive.
Mhm.
She actually hit him, like it slapped him, and then pushed him. And I said, "I want to take a broom
Oh.
stick and hit you," and and yelling at him, etc. And that was supposed to be funny
Mhm.
because it was a prank. The guy didn't react to that. He let her uh, slap
Mhm.
him,
Mhm.
and the video itself had thousands upon thousands of views, and it was shared as a funny thing.
Mm-mm.
But the
Yeah.
way that she reacted, not knowing that she was being videotaped,
Yes.
it was, she hit
Sure.
him. She almost hit the little children.
Yeah.
What do you say to that? Because it's since it is a woman displaying signs of abuse to a man and the
Right.
children is that funny?
No, it's not funny. And you know what? Abuse is abuse. It's unfortunate that statistically women are the victims, the majority of the victims,
Yeah.
and then the children, and the damage, the psychological damage that it does to the children, even if they haven't been physically affected. But I remember several years ago up at the Barry Church, I did a seminar and concert with another friend of mine who was a victim of abuse and a survivor. We're survivors. And we had a representative from the police department that came for the afternoon symposium to just answer questions. And we had people stood up and said, look, I've been a member of this church and my husband abuses me all the time. And this was her way of being in public and saying, I'm in public. This is the only place that I can actually do this. I need help. But the police officer shared with us a story of an older gentleman that came into the police station up in Barrie several years ago. This counselor had an office just off the lobby. And the police officer came and got the counselor and said, I think you need to come out and talk to this gentleman. And when she walked out, he was standing there. He had cuts and he was bleeding and his clothes were dirty and he smelled terrible. And the woman said, I need, come and talk to me. And he goes, I don't want you to press charges. I just want you to make her stop. And his wife had locked him in the basement for 3 days without any food, without any toilet facilities, without anything, without water, because he had stepped out of line. But his response, which was very conditioned at this point, he said, well, when I married her, I said for better or for worse. So, and so that is, I brainwashed into his own mind, but I'm sure it was driven home with a hammer from his abuser. So regardless of whether it's female to male, male to female, the negative messages that are sent can imprison a person and make it impossible for them to reach out and or even identify, because at some point they're even denying that they're experiencing what they're experiencing, because how could love, something so amazing, have turned into something so horrific?
Yeah. A lady was telling me in one conversation I had about this subject, she told me the same thing that you said. But when I married him, I said for better or worse.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have to realize too, and I use this example that scripture has been used as a weapon, because I am a person of faith, and even though I went through what I went through, all the time I was crying out to God to be there for me. But I know that there are verses in the Bible that are used to imprison a woman with an abusive man, and God came that we would be set free. He came that we would have life and have it abundantly, and that he has wonderful plans for us. Do you really think that if you believe in God, that he believes that what this person is doing to you is okay? Because my Bible doesn't say that. My Bible says in Romans that I will avenge you, says the Lord.
How do you say that? Oh man, I'm loving this discussion. You're great. I was watching this morning a live video by Sarah McDougall. She changed her last name.
Sarah McDougall is the author that actually asked me if she could use my graphic.
Yeah, I was chatting with her earlier, and I did ask her if we could go live together. So we are going to go live one of these days.
She's great.
I know she has a different last name now because she recently married.
Yes.
But don't ask me to pronounce that.
Yeah. I just go by Sarah McDougall as well.
I know. It's Hafster?
I'd have to look it up on
Anyway, Sarah.
Yes.
She has every morning a live.
Yes.
And she goes live every morning, and she calls it Jesus Bubbles.
Yeah.
So for the past few days, she has been talking about judges.
Mhm.
And in Judges 19, there is this 19 and 20,
Mhm.
especially 19. This is a horrible chapter. To me, is the worst chapter in the whole Bible,
Mm.
where it talks about a man that went to take his concubine that had escaped, and he went and took her home. On the way home, they stopped by a place and a city, and when the people in the city learned that there was a visitor, this man knocked at the door of the hotel or the house where he was,
Mhm.
and they wanted to have sex with this guy. And the host said, "No, I'm not going to let you do that." And then this guy, the husband, took his concubine and threw her out to the streets. And those men raped her.
Yeah.
Was a gang raped all night long
Mm.
until she actually died in the early hours of the morning. Next morning, the guy comes out of the house and he finds her dead. He takes the body, puts it on his donkey, and goes home. Once he goes home, he cuts her in 12 pieces. He dismembers her
Mhm.
post-mortem,
Mhm.
and sends each piece to every tribe of the Israelite nation. And everybody gets upset how this happened. And to make a long story short, they sent 400,000 men, soldiers from all over Israel, to the Benjamin tribe, to that city.
Mhm.
And they asked the city, uh, bring us the men who did this, because we are going to make justice. We are going to execute them.
Mm.
Because this is the most horrible thing that has happened, and we cannot do that. The city says, no way. We are going to fight if we have to. So there is a big battle. There are many details, very interesting details. At the end, the Benjamites, they lose tens of thousands of people, and they go back to the city and they kill everybody in the city. And Sarah was saying, in those times, that culture, a concubine was like a second class wife. It wasn't a real wife,
Right.
right? But God wanted to show that he doesn't take abuse lightly.
Mm-mm.
He
Mm-mm.
doesn't. So he avenges.
Yeah.
The Bible says that, and then he avenges what happened to that lady, and it doesn't matter in what label of the society you are.
Mhm.
God will avenge
Right.
whatever is done to the little one, right?
That's true.
So, yeah, the Bible can be used in horrible ways. Like
Mhm.
this lady was telling me, well, he tells me that I am his property because
Mhm.
I am his wife. That's what she was telling me, right?
Mhm.
But, well, no, the Bible says no. The Bible, God sides by the poor, by the victims, by the lesser, not lesser because they are less, but because culturally or socially are
Sure.
down, right?
Right.
And he avenges them, and he
Mhm.
doesn't take abuse lightly,
Mm.
and he doesn't spare those who um, protect abusers.
That was it. That was when we were talking about that and said the city wouldn't give him up. They
Yeah,
wouldn't give them up. And I thought, that is so typical that society as a whole protects the perpetrators because it's uncomfortable and it's awkward. And then, and I feel very strongly that they are equally as responsible, those who cover up what they know has been done.
yeah,
I really do
It's
believe. But again, it is not for me to avenge. And it is for me to know that what happened to me happened to me. Um, the person who did it may deny it as much as they want to, but I know what my reality is. I know what it was. I know how long it lasted. I know the wounds that it caused. I
Mhm.
know the healing that has happened. And that has been, for me, what has kept my eyes open when I'm doing concerts. And I sing a song that I know broke my heart, because it broke my heart because I knew that that was God talking to me and healing me. And when I look out into an audience and I see a woman who is just weeping, I
Mhm.
find her after a concert, and I can 9 times out of 10 tell you that that woman will share with me that she was a survivor or she's currently a victim.
Mhm.
And so I'm using isolation to write, partly for the healing of the scars that happened on the inside that people cannot see, and as a means of just getting it out there and saying one more is just one more too many. One more is just it just the children that are impacted, the women, and I'm lucky. I live. There are too many. There's too many stories out there where the women just never made it out.
Yeah.
And I had a very dear friend to me say, when I downplayed my own experience and saying, but other people have had it worse. And this very special friend said to me, no, you don't talk about that, because what you experienced was your experience. And
Mhm.
that means it's 100%. It's not
Exactly.
80% of somebody else's and they had a darker story, or they had more pain, or they had more. It doesn't matter. Pain is pain.
Mhm.
And experiences and scars and wounds are wounds.
Yes.
And so I know for me that I can, when I have insomnia, and I know you posted recently, what do you love about insomnia? Absolutely nothing. Because But I love it in the sense that I always channel it then. I don't lay there and start. I try and push out anything negative that still
Mhm.
18 years later tries to come in. But I'm able to identify now that the negative words that are spoken into my inner voice, they're not God's words.
Mhm.
They're not God's words. God said, you're precious, you're beautiful, you're wonderful. I redeemed you. The enemy says everything opposite in
Mhm.
order to try and keep me trapped, because ultimately God wants my salvation and Satan wants my devastation.
Yeah.
And I refuse to let that happen. And that's why I was able to leave when I left, and continued to stay on this pathway to complete healing. And complete healing for me will happen when we get to heaven,
Mhm.
because here it's going to be painful. There's always going to be painful experiences. There's always going to be painful memories. I can learn from them, or I can let them cripple me. I refuse to let them cripple me. And I wrote a devotional just a few days ago. I was fortunate to go to a prayer retreat in February, right before this pandemic shut the world down,
Mhm.
with 7 beautiful, amazing women that I've been on a prayer chain Bible study, book study with for the last few years. I was a little apprehensive, I can tell you. I'm like, who are these people? I've never prayed with you. I'm not sure I'm comfortable. And I was able to share something painful about my father's passing in September, when
Yeah.
my dad passed away. And it was such a relief to be able to just weep in someone's presence. And that has been part of the issue of distance, not being able to be with my family to help grieve and things like that, and be with my daughter. But it also, when things started coming back from 18 years ago, I was able to go to these women and say, I'm coveting your prayers now. I need your prayers, because I'm having a hard time. And to be able to say that I felt that it was in a safe place. There's not a lot of safe places for victims, because
Yeah.
society will judge them. Your friends will say you were too weak, you weren't strong enough, you have all of those things. But what came to me as I was writing the other morning was the paralytic who had 4 friends that knew he needed healing.
Yeah.
And they crack open a hole in the roof.
And they put him,
And they lowered him down in front of Jesus. And Jesus saw their faith.
Mm-hmm.
And he was healed. And my blanket had 7 corners. Because when these women prayed for me, I knew that I had 7 women holding those corners to lower me down at the feet of Jesus so that he could heal me. And that healing is progressive and it's going to continue. But that is the reason that people need to be believed, because they need help and they need someone that's going to pray for them because they can't pray for themselves.
Yeah.
And thus endeth my, no, okay. But you know what I'm saying? It's just,
yes.
I mean, I could give graphic details and that won't serve a purpose for anybody, but I can be a voice to say it has to stop protecting them, stop letting them hide in plain sight. And so if I can put a visual together where both victim and author and counselor says, that's it, that's exactly what's happening. And people have to understand what's happening below the line. And now in isolation, closed doors. Kids that could report abuse aren't going to school. Teachers are the ones who primarily will report abuse. And now they don't even have that avenue available to them. And it's just got to stop. It's just got to stop. Yeah. So I'm ready for this pandemic to stop too.
Yes, yes. So Pam, as a parting question, I'm going to ask you a double question, actually.
Okay.
In your parting words, what will you tell the women that are watching this, that are being abused, they're in an abusive relationship, and they're trapped? What will you tell them? And then what will you tell people like me that are not in that situation, that are men, and what will you tell us to educate us to what to do?
Well, the
and
first
I'm going to
thing,
put you on the big screen so you can look at the camera and people, and you will be just talking to them.
Okay. All right.
Oops, no, that's mine.
I see you, but I could just talk to you.
Wait, there you
All
are.
Right. Well, you know, I'm going to say one thing to every woman out there that is experiencing abuse right now. You're not crazy. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You're beautiful. And the lies that have been hammered into your brain are lies. And you deserve so much more than that. And I want you to reach out. I want you to call. If your pastor isn't safe, call a female elder of your church. If you need to, message Josue and he'll get a message to me, and I'll find wherever you are and I'll see if I can't get some resources to you. But reach out, because there are people that care that you're in this situation, that you were selected, that there was nothing wrong with you. You didn't ask for it. You don't deserve it. And you deserve to have the life that God always planned for you. And it's not what you're experiencing right now. And for the men out there who are good men, they are, I'd like to say we have more good men than we have not good men. And I think that that if you are in a position where something comes to your attention, and I'm asking you to pray that God will impress upon you to be available to help them find resources that they need in order to start again, and believe them. It's not about trying to name or shame a man. It is about escaping something that God never intended. And we are supposed, if we men, to cherish their women like Christ loves the church. It's love. It's not supposed to be abuse. It's not supposed to be the fist. It's not words. It's not cruelty. It's not any of those things. We have to stop. And we're the ones who can make it stop. We can make it stop, and we can help other people.
Thank you so much, Pam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so glad I just get to hear your voice and see your face.
Yes, it was great talking with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your words. Thank you for your ministry. Thank you for being so empathetic and reaching out. And thank you for educating the rest of us. Thank you.
Thank you for
Say hi to your husband.
I will.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Well, friends, this was our conversation with Pam Tucker. Remember that everybody is got a story that can change your heart. Your story matters. You're important. Have a pleasant day. Bye-bye.